Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are author Clinton Galloway and filmmaker Alex Warren. Author Clinton Galloway was graduated from high school in Queens and went to Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. He's a licensed CPA and president of Galloway and Associates. Your book, Anatomy of a Hustle, is totally political as far as I can see. How did you come about to write it?
Well, we ended up in a political process, and as we got involved with cable television, we had to deal with the politicians downtown, and we found out how City Hall really works. It wasn't like they tell you in the books or in political science class in college.
I bet it wasn't. When you got out of college and you started to practice, were you headed in this kind of political field? Is that what you wanted to do?
Not at all. I was a CPA, and I was recruited by an international accounting firm in San Francisco where I worked.
Oh.
And then I came to Los Angeles. I was recruited by an investment banking firm here in Los Angeles. And my brother was the one who originally understood what cable meant for the future.
Your brother was a doctor?
Yes, he was. He was a doctor here in Los Angeles and in South Central Los Angeles. And he understood what cable could do to improve the quality of life for people.
Well, tell us just a little bit, because we're talking about Anatomy of a Hustle. We didn't go on to say cable comes to South Central LA, right, which is what the whole idea of your book is.
Yes, it's about cable television, but it's really about the political process that goes on downtown when the average citizen goes down and brings an idea that you think you can improve your community, you think you're doing something good, and you find yourself being battled by those who you thought were supposed to be supporting your community.
I think that's one of the, did your brother see that also?
Yes, he did. He saw it firsthand, because I got involved after he did.
But he wanted to bring cable to South Central.
Absolutely.
And why would you want to bring cable to South Central?
He saw the power that cable was going to have. I didn't see it at first, because I was surprised that people would pay to watch television, and I told him that. But he was my big brother, so I decided I would do what he told me, and he knew that the value of information and education, and he saw that cable would become the next newspaper.
But it had nothing to do with CPA, did it? Except that you could raise your money from there, couldn't you?
Well, I was in investment banking.
Right.
So I was with the Beverly Hills investment banking firm, and that was why I was able to raise the kind of money we would need, $40 million, to do this kind of project.
So you were able to come up with that money. So yes, you were on that end, he was on the education end, and yes, he was practicing down there, you said.
Yes, he was. He was practicing down there, and he knew a lot of doctors, and medical issues in South Central are very important because people don't get the information or the kind of care they need.
But we're talking about a book that's like, how much later is this? 20 years?
30 years.
30 years. Somebody would say, or it could be said, that you're sour grapes now because you missed out. Why would you write a book?
Well, it took us 14 years to go through the process. Between the legal process, the United States Supreme Court, and the district court here in Los Angeles held the case for 6.5 years, and we never got a trial. Shortly after the case was ended in 1992, my brother contracted leukemia, and I had a brain tumor.
Both of you got sick?
We both got sick in the same year. And beginning of 1994, he contracted leukemia, which he subsequently passed from, and I had a brain tumor which I needed immediate operation on. And so after that was about getting ourselves together again.
But it was about getting yourselves together, but was it already dead? Was your issue dead in South Central at that time?
Yes.
It was dead?
It was dead.
And then how did you go back? Because there are so many facts in this. I mean, I read it practically in one night because it was like, oh, I know these people. I can't believe this is happening. But how did you get all those facts straight?
Well, because I was an accountant, I kept all the documents from 1979 through the end of this case. And we put them on the internet. So we have 10,000 pages of documents and 8 hours of hearings that we had before the city council and the various subcommittees. Because I thought it was important that people see the actual information, not merely take my word for it.
So your main thrust was for the minorities to have something in their area. That was the main thrust of what you wanted to do.
This was something that was available all over the country, and in the poorest area that needed it the most, where they had no education, and it was about economic development. When you can pump in $40 million into a community, it means a lot of jobs and a lot of changes.
So how are you going to do it? What were you going to do?
We had formed a joint venture with the company that built the Hollywood-Wilshire franchise. So we already had the technical expertise.
And that was from your company, where you were working? I see.
No, this was from another company that we had met. My brother met.
That's what I mean. Oh, you met them.
Yes, and they were already building the Hollywood-Wilshire franchise.
I see.
Our franchise was directly next to them, so therefore we could use the same equipment and the same construction crews, and they had experience in the business. So it gave us the opportunity. We had the ability to raise money because my brother was a doctor and I was an investment banker.
And then you came up against big politics in City Hall.
That's exactly it.
Mayor Bradley was there then.
Mayor Bradley was there, and and it's not only the mayor, but it's the people who are friends of the mayor, because they came as using the mayor as their support to say that you have to give us part of your company. And
I want to say one thing. Are you afraid for exposing all these people for the way they are? Some of them are gone.
Some
of them aren't with us.
Some are still with us, and some of them are, we were warned when we got into this, we were warned by the FBI that there were some tough people involved on the other side.
That's what I was wondering.
And, again, I came from New York City, so I'm not really that afraid of most people. So.
I just got chills because I got scared talking about it, having you talk about it.
But it's my responsibility to do that. It's the responsibility of the citizen when the government gets out of line for the citizen to stand up and say there's something wrong here. And that's all we could do. The only way we had was to go and seek the protection of federal courts. But we didn't know that the federal judge was friends of the mayors.
I was just going to say, probably you had a standstill at the federal courts, too.
Yes. When we filed the case was originally filed in 1983. She dismissed our case.
What was our judge's name?
Consuelo Marshall,
yeah.
who ultimately became the Chief Justice here in the district court.
She just left the court, didn't she?
Yes, she did. And they had a nice thing about her civil rights record, and
Yes, and I went to it. I went to it. Okay. I went to when she stepped down and George King came in.
And she had just become a judge when she got our case.
And she was appointed, so she was newly appointed.
She was newly appointed by Jimmy Carter, and she was recommended by Tom Bradley, where she had worked for the city attorney's office and for Johnny Cochran.
Oh, she worked for Johnny Cochran,
yes,
too.
she worked for Johnny Cochran.
Another friend.
Another friend.
My daughter. Another friend of mine, because my daughter roomed with his daughter.
You know everybody. But that powerful clique downtown meant that, I knew 2 weeks before we filed the case that our case would end up in her court.
Oh, you did know that?
Yes, because I also
But it wasn't very long. 2 weeks isn't very much time, is it?
Well, I mean, it's to know in advance that someone's going to receive your case who you know is going to be against you. It's kind of a surprise. Because the person who told me she had offices with her husband.
Oh, so you knew.
I knew.
You knew.
And he told me what was going to happen. She was going to dismiss the case, and we had to appeal it. So we had to take it up to the United States Supreme Court to come back down and get a hearing. She refused to give us a trial. And there was nothing we could do since we were in federal court already. That was the protection. No civil rights organization stepped up for us at any point in time.
I want to go through these names.
Sure.
Because I want to go through a list of names because you name so many people. And then just give me a thumbnail because I don't want to miss out on this. We talked about Tom Bradley.
Right.
Okay, Johnny Cochran.
Yes, Johnny had basically, he was very tight with the mayor. The mayor had appointed him to the airport commission, and he was really the mover and shaker in town. And so Johnny was the one who said that we wouldn't do any business unless we gave part of our company to the friends of the mayors.
Oh, so it came down to that. Maxine Waters, she was in that area?
Maxine Waters, we talked with Maxine. She said, regardless of the civil rights or the constitutional issues, this is a city issue and I'm not going to get involved.
Oh, because she was in Washington.
Right, she was in Washington. And she was actually an assemblywoman, but she recommended her husband, Sidney Williams, to come and be involved with us.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Who later became ambassador to? Yes.
But, we didn't want to be involved with politicians' friends and things like that because he didn't have anything to offer to us.
I see. Willie Brown, San Francisco, where you were living.
I mean, Willie Brown was one of the most powerful Democrats in the state. And this was all ended up being a very political situation because the concern of who will control the voting bloc of South Central and the black community became an issue.
And you didn't really mention too much about Willie, but I knew he was a part of this.
He wasn't that much involved with what we were doing because he was in Northern California.
Right.
We dealt with people who were based in Southern California, Mervyn Donnelly, Maxine Waters, Diane Watson. You know, those were the people at that level.
But the thing is, it's so interesting that you didn't get the support that you thought you would get.
Well, we didn't get any support out of any of the civil rights organizations, and we didn't get any support out of anyone other than ourselves.
So they didn't think that this was a humanitarian or civil rights issue, bringing education to South Central, where they were having crime and problems?
Which goes on today. But they were concerned about Mayor Bradley because he was running for governor in 1982.
Oh, right.
When this was all selected, he was running for governor. So they were trying to hush this up and keep it quiet so that no one would know what he was doing.
I see. So then we had Danny Bakewell.
Oh,
Danny, I'm sorry.
And Danny Bakewell was the head of the Brotherhood Crusade at that point.
And he wasn't.
He wasn't doing anything. I mean, these people didn't even understand what cable was. But they told us that unless we gave them 2/3, not 20% or 15%, 2/3 of the company, that we couldn't do business
And
here.
you brought it. And the other one that you mentioned so much was Channing Johnson.
Channing was working for the city. He was the deputy to Councilman Robert Farrell when we started this. He was working for the city and at the same time trying to get us to take a part of our company.
Yeah, that's...
We went to the DA and we went to the U.S. District, to the FBI, and Gil Garcetti was the head of the Political Crimes Division, and he refused to do anything, based upon the fact that Councilman Farrell and Channing Johnson would not talk to them. The records were clear. The record was clear as to what he did, and it was in violation of the law. But he simply refused to do anything. And that's where we were stuck.
So you just hit a blank wall.
Basically, we were against the city, the county, the state, and the federal government, and we had a U.S. District Court judge who refused to give us a trial.
And they're calling you those Galloway boys.
They hated us. I mean, come on, let's be honest, they just hated us. Because they didn't know who we were. They didn't know where we were from and how we would come up with so much money when they couldn't do it.
Oh, that
and
was
so
the
they kept
point.
changing the rules. We had
I
investment
see.
bankers. We even had the richest man in the world guarantee our money. Adnan Khashoggi at that point was the richest man in the world, and he sent a letter to the city guaranteeing $50 million worth of debt for us. But they wouldn't accept that. They said, we don't accept letters from Arabs and red Chinese. On the floor of the city council, this was said by Art Snyder.
Oh,
And you know what a person he was. I won't get into his character.
I didn't write his name down. I should have, because that's another one you can talk about.
He was
I think
very
this
different.
this was like reading a gossip column to
Well,
me.
unfortunately, I had to live it. So, it took a lot of time and a lot of money, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. And, the city lost a lot of money. Why would the city spend millions of dollars to stop economic development in the poorest community in the city?
And why was it? Why do you think?
Because
they
unless
wanted the money?
They wanted the money, unless they agreed. Unless they're getting paid, unless they can get a percentage of what everybody's doing, they don't want to do it.
So does that continue today?
Yes, it
everywhere?
does. Yes, it does.
But then this whole thing we're talking about ends up at K&B,
Yes.
Kaufman and Broad,
Because
who were builders.
yes, they were in the real estate business. They had
Right.
no interest in constructing anything, and they never did do anything in cable. But Eli Broad and Danny Bakewell were large contributors to the mayor's governor's campaign.
Oh, Danny Bakewell had money?
Yes.
Oh,
because he was the guy raising money through the Brotherhood Crusade, and he was helping.
So he was putting that money
He was putting
into...
money into the governor's campaign,
I
as
see.
was Eli Broad and Kaufman and Broad.
I see.
But they never did anything. So they held it for three more years, and nothing got done. And once again, South Central was stuck with no technology and no ability to improve their conditions.
And where are we today?
We're in the same situation. They have cable television, but the fact is they don't control the images that come to them because they don't control the distribution.
I see.
And one thing I'll say, Rupert Murdoch said, is if you want to control what goes on television, you need to own that part of that television.
And that's what he's done.
And
He's controlled.
And that's what he's done. And so
Right.
his vision is what you see on television.
Yeah.
The image that people in South Central have, and to improve their own community, is not there.
It's not the image that they should be seeing.
No,
I see.
they don't create their own image. If you can't create your own
I
image, are
see.
you truly free?
I see.
When others decide what you are and who you are.
Well, I think everyone has to read Anatomy of a Hustle.
I hope they'll
and
take a
talk
look.
about Clinton Galloway.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank
and
you.
don't go away. We'll be right back with filmmaker Alex Warren. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with writer, producer, director Alex Warren, who was born in Denver, raised in Stade, and then returned to the United States to graduate from high school in Houston and earned a degree in film at Rice University. Her postgraduate work was at Georgetown, which led to a high-powered lobbyist job. Then she modeled in Europe, she acted in films, and she's with us today. We're glad to have you here as a filmmaker.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Your documentary, Loving the West, which I have here, Losing the West, Loving the West, too.
Exactly. It's encompassed in Losing the West is learning how to love the West.
Yes, and tell us why you made it.
I am fortunate enough to have a small ranch in Ridgway, Colorado, which is in the southwestern part, and it's primarily agricultural area. And I was investigating different possibilities for a documentary and started to listen to some of the issues that a lot of the neighbors that are farmers and ranchers were facing. And we discovered this incredibly charismatic character that the film is somewhat based on, and decided to follow him for a while. About 2.5 years we followed him.
Oh, you have? You've been working on it for a long time. Well, when I talked about the introduction, you lived in Switzerland.
That's right.
Did any of the your past, living in Houston, living in Switzerland, have any influences on you as far as this goes?
It's funny that you mentioned that. Yes, very much so, because one of the aspects that the film is most interested in exposing is the loss of agricultural land and open space.
Right.
And having lived in so many different places, I've watched it happen. It's easier to see from afar. So as a small child growing up in Stade, if I go back, it's a different place. My mother's Greek. We have a place on the islands, and when I go back now, it's again nothing is the same in that it's very much developed. And
overdrawn. When you left, when you were in Europe, you were speaking a lot of languages. How did you pick up languages so fast?
Total immersion.
Was it?
Yeah.
So you in what part of what do they speak in Stade?
Stade itself is Swiss German part, but
yeah.
we, my sister and brother and I went to French speaking schools.
Oh, so you learned French there?
That's right, yeah. And then
Did you learn German then? And
we did. German was a mandatory language, and so we spoke English and Greek at the house. So
I see. And then when you left there, why would you go to Houston for not New York or some other place?
Yeah, good question. My father was at the time involved in the oil industry, and so his work took us to Texas.
That also is probably had an influence on this film.
It has. It has. In the sense that the film is not anti-development or anti-big industry in any way. What it tries to expose is that there are certain lands that must be protected because we don't know what to do to put them back the way they were.
They never can go back the way they were, though.
That's right. So the film tries to raise awareness about certain parts of the country where the migrations of herds of animals and the habitat of certain animals must be protected.
So many different layers of protecting the West.
Correct.
Not just land.
Yeah.
You have agriculture, as you mentioned, and you have animal, you have habitat.
That's exactly right, and it's not an impossible thing to work together. There are lots of tools that are available
I see.
for land protection.
I see.
And one of the things that we discovered starting out with the film was that sort of investigating all of those legal tools on how to protect land wasn't the most exciting cinematic experience.
Yeah, what do you do?
So instead, I chose to follow this cowboy whose life was completely interwoven with the land. And then that, in and of itself, the story came out, and a lot of experts chime in about the problems and the issues and some of the solutions.
This also, when getting back to Texas and going to Rice, I didn't know they had a film school.
Yeah, they don't really,
Oh,
but they do. They have a media department.
Oh, that's what it was, because you really took your filmmaking classes there.
I did, and then I went around, as you had said, around, and then came back to filmmaking when I moved out here.
When you came back here.
Yeah.
But what kind of lobbying job would you have in D.C.? That was fascinating to me. Modeling I can see,
Yeah.
tall, beautiful, but lobbying?
Right. I was interested in getting what one might have considered a real job right out of college, and I ended up working for a lobbying firm as a low on the totem pole.
Yes.
But quickly realized that gridlock was maybe what, and this was a while ago, so
It's even worse,
it's even
right?
worse now. So I just kind of wanted to distance myself from that, in the sense that I didn't know how much activism could really happen at that level.
But I think that was probably good for you, because it gave your eyes a different thing to look for, even in filmmaking.
Yeah,
I mean, that hitting gridlock, knowing what to do, just like you said, some cinematic things aren't very interesting. Well, sometimes lobbying is not very interesting either.
right.
So you have to learn how to go around it.
Yeah, that's a
But one thing I think Howard Linscott, who is was an old Marlboro man, was the person that you follow. I think is the person on this
that's
on
how
our
yeah.
who's the center of your film. What is a lifelong cowboy? You call him a lifelong cowboy.
A lifelong cowboy is almost a 19th century concept. It's a person who is hired to tend cattle
Oh,
on
right.
behalf of the people that own the cattle.
Ah, I forgot about that.
And
Yeah, they have an actual job, don't they?
That's right. That's right. It's sort of a shepherd, a modern day shepherd.
So what does he have to lose? What would he have to lose with the West changing so much?
Well, I urge you to see the film
Oh.
because he
Okay.
loses quite a bit in
He
the
does.
film.
Oh, he does.
Yeah. But as Howard as a metaphor for every person, for each one of us, we stand to lose also quite a bit
Yeah.
if we are not aware of these issues. And however, with population growing the way it is, yet again, the film doesn't come at the issue from a perspective of there's no other option but stopping development, or no, development is inevitable.
No, I think that's the point that you've made, which is really a good point. So how development is inevitable, how do we change things? How do you propose that we change things?
I think that a good place to start is to have the discussion and to have it at all different levels, the municipal level, the state level. When you have city planners that are aware of issues like that, then specific areas end up being protected, become designated as green zones. The city ends up being built in such a way that it doesn't infringe on some of these lands that must be protected. Then the other aspect, the other way to come at it is private landowners that have large acreage can place easements and sort of designate that land in perpetuity for whatever purpose they see fit.
You're talking about city meetings and being aware of all this, but we're talking about, I think, a big space somewhere. I don't know where, what land mass are we talking about? What states?
Well, the reason that it was fortuitous for us to be in Colorado and film this
It's all in Colorado?
a good amount of it, quite a bit happens here in California as well.
Oh.
I've interviewed a few farmers and some experts from California, excuse me. But Colorado is a terrific example of what can happen if they have done an amazing job in raising awareness. They're sort of on the forefront of these issues. And they have statewide programs that sort of, even the lottery funds go towards protecting open space. But they, I think, began to see a corridor of development creeping along one of the large highways between Denver and Colorado Springs and north to Fort Collins. And much of that land has now sort of fallen into discussion, if not already been protected.
I see.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about the wild, wild west. We're talking about land all around us. Land that can be
Absolutely.
taken away from us so easily. And because when you said city meetings, I was thinking of, vast acres of land in the middle of our country.
Right.
But that's not true. It happens all around us. I mean, we're losing
Right.
the West everywhere.
We are losing the
I
West.
see.
We're doing a benefit screening for Pierce College.
Perfect.
They have a large farm, and what's left of it today is considerably less than what it was, I imagine, 40, 50 years ago. And the program itself, the veterinary program and the farm program itself is under threat.
Is it really? Because
yeah.
that was what they were known for, Pierce.
Exactly. And they have budgetary constraints, which is universal, but they're also, their chairhead is set to retire in a couple years, and if he retires in 2 years, there will probably be not that many solutions.
Yeah, because he probably was a great activist, being there for so long.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're raising the awareness, and I'm glad that you made this film. And before we leave, I know you have another humanitarian cause that you are involved in.
It's a small charity that we do disaster relief on a small scale.
Oh.
And we were
All over the world?
we were in Haiti.
Oh, you were?
Right, 10 days after the earthquake.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Thank you for coming, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks for watching the Joan